Well, welcome to the Experts Podcast. Nick Hayes with you. Great to have your company. We're going to be diving deep into a topic that I am quite passionate about because it's something that I've been probably building up to for the last 15 years of my working life. Media plays such an important role when it comes to demonstrating your authority, your expertise, and who you are as a business owner or a particular area of expertise that you cover. It's how you get it out there. Earned media is a great place to do it. Now, if you're like me, you've probably dabbled a few dollars into the dark arts of search engine optimization, SEO as we call it. Haven't I spent a few dollars on that in the past? There's a new one out there. It's called GEO, Generative Engine Optimisation. And I've got two fantastic experts to have a chat to about this. Darryl Sparey from Hard Numbers, Simon Murphy from Indigo Murphy. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, Nick. How are you doing?
Mate, we're doing well. Darryl, I will share with the audience, we used to work with each other at Precise Media in the UK when we were probably a little slimmer, a little better looking, and one might say still footloose, fancy free, because there was no children sort of biting at the ankles. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much, my good friend. Good to see you looking so well and clearly thriving down under, my friend.
Thank you, Darryl. Yes, thriving on too many reds and too many steaks. Simon, I have only had the pleasure of knowing you for the last sort of 6 to 12 months. Simon, tell us a little bit what you're doing in the PR earned media space.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nick, again for having me, and nice to see my UK sparring partner in crime, Darryl Sparey. Mr. Sparey and I do a bit of work on and off together. Yeah, look, potted history, very briefly, 30 years of PR agency, both big and small. I'm now running my own business, but I come from the big end of agency town. And throughout the course of that 30 years or so, pitching earned stories to media has been central to what I do, and helping build clients' reputation and trust. Most people will be aware that earned media, which is in a sense the traditional media, the newspapers and so on, radio, etc., they have been on the wane in recent years as advertising's dried up and social media has picked up, and youngsters in particular get their news from different sources. But the great news is, and I think it's going to be central to the discussion today, is that earned's back, baby. It's back. It's incredibly important, particularly in this new age of AI or generative AI, whereby chat engines or LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude, are using, citing earned sources, newspaper, radio, and other sources as well, but really seeing them as incredibly credible sources about the topics that they get asked about. So the more you appear in earned, the better, more likelihood that your visibility and the quality of your visibility will pick up. So left big agency, and I'm now working with the likes of Darryl, advising firms varying sizes on how to get ahead in both generative AI and also traditional earned as well.
That's music to my ears, Simon, because it is all the hard work and hard-earned media that we have been generating and worked with over the years. Sometimes people will, they'll question the credibility, they'll question the very value of it. And Darryl, this is over to you, because Hard Numbers, your agency, is all about the data behind the scenes, the proof. You're talking to a lot of PR companies. In fact, it's very rare, I doubt, that you are actually in your office, because you seem to be speaking at every single conference at the drop of a hat. Is that what you're up to?
Yeah, you're on to me, mate. You rumbled me. Look, GEO is a huge opportunity, and I passionately believe that a rising tide raises all ships, right? The market is big enough for us all if we capitalize on this opportunity and don't let it go in the way that we did with SEO and with social and things like that as a PR and communications industry. And part of that approach was back in October 2024. We were one of the first companies, definitely first PR agencies, probably one of the first companies in the world to analyze where ChatGPT, what were the sources that ChatGPT was citing when it formulated responses to the world's about the reputation of the world's 100 biggest brands. And what we found was that earned media coverage drove 61% of all LLM responses. And when it came to particular pillars of reputation, so around trust, it was cited in 65% of responses. And when it came to value for money, it was cited in 72% of the responses. So what that ultimately says to us is earned media is the key source that that ChatGPT and other LLMs will use to formulate opinions about the reputation of brands globally. And for us as professional communicators, that's good news. But we've got to be across this, and we've got to update our skills and our approaches and things like that, so that we can capitalize on the opportunity that creates for us.
Brilliant, and beautiful to see some very hard numbers there. Great statistics. I love statistics. But the statistics don't lie. I'm going to stay with you, Darryl. Just for our listeners, the difference between SEO and GEO.
Okay. I'm definitely not one of those people out there that's saying SEO is dead. Like, SEO is still a really important part. And actually, the vast majority of links that are cited when ChatGPT provides a link or any other LLM in response to a question is effectively by doing a live Google search, what's called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. Okay. Not to get too technical. So hopefully, so basically, SEO is still a really important part of the mix, because all of the different LLMs. So Gemini obviously uses Google. ChatGPT says it uses Bing publicly. Claude uses Brave, etc., etc. They all use a browser to help them get information to formulate the opinion. However, there are things within how you optimize content for generative engines, and the kinds of content that you create and the places that you put that content that are different. SEO, if you really boil it down, and there will be people, I'm sure, shouting at their earbuds when they hear me say this, is about really optimizing for link building. 50% of SEO is basically links from third-party sites back to your site, for a small number of high domain authority sites, and getting links from those sites back to your site. GEO is more about being in a broader range of places that are authoritative sources on about your category, your product, your service, the topics that you want to engage with your users about, and having a greater spread of coverage. And it doesn't matter about whether there's a link back to your, from a geo perspective, whether there's a link back to your site or not. Then from a technical kind of on-site perspective, it's how you present your content and how you use things like schema markup and other things to make your content as machine readable as possible. So it's as easy as possible for an LLM to kind of pick up your content and use it to answer a question. Hopefully I didn't get too technical with that, and hopefully everyone was able to understand that.
Darryl, we are fortunate that it's you that's delivering. Technical does not reach or feature in amongst your conversation, which is a beauty for the audience that's listening today. Simon, over to you. So I suppose that, Darryl's sort of classed that beautifully, the difference between the two. But it all comes down to consumer behaviour, what we use. And we have seen an increase in the use of LLMs, large language models, the artificial intelligence, people looking to that as opposed to Googling a company or an individual. Yeah,
that's 100% right. And it's not just generational either. I mean, notwithstanding, of course, youngsters, and I say youngsters as a proud Gen Xer, but, Gen Z, for example, over 52% turn to some form of LLM to make an informed decision about, lifestyle or purchase decision. Also in B2B, it's incredibly influential. In fact, arguably, B2B decision-making really led the way in generative search, and some phenomenal numbers from what I call the early days, by that I mean about a year old, but regularly updated in the 90 percentile, whereby B2B decisions, purchase decisions, are being made within generative AI. So yeah, it's incredibly powerful, not just in terms of floating brand visibility, but also increasingly for that commercial purchase decision. And the higher quality that reference, that earned citation is, the more likelihood that you're going to see the searcher go and purchase that way. So it's an incredible tool. I mean, I refer to, and I've been banging the drum for quite a while now about the great communications reset. But it's not just reputation; it's also the commercial opportunity as well that comes with it.
Brilliant. And I love it how you talk about 1 year. This GEO's only been around for 3 years. Like, it's not like it's been around. The SEO, I can remember the early days of that, just getting your head around that. I think people are only just starting to understand it, let alone get on top of it. And now GEOs are up and about. I've got a favourite saying, and I'd love to hear both your views on this, is that and it's a comment that we make, particularly when we do a Meet the Media event, or we're communicating with those that are looking to get their expertise out there. People read editorial, they glaze over advertising. And I think that glaze over advertising is where I look at SEO at the moment, and the way that the way that you can jump up higher on the numbers, you can get yourself placed in position, not because you're good at what you do or that your product is any better than anyone else's. It's you've just paid more to be there. GEO doesn't quite do that, does it? Because it's searching across all of the different platforms, and it's taking real content to deliver back to the consumer. So are we going to see a consumer sort of just jump off SEO or jump off a Google search, for instance, which is using GEO, by the way? I know, I'm fully aware of that. But is that where we're heading? Where we're going to just look for the real content as opposed to who's paying the most for it?
I think that's a really interesting question. And there's probably two sides to that. I think absolutely, and picking up a point that a thread from Simon is that authenticity and expertise on a particular topic is really important. And we see this from the research that we've done, particularly when we look, and other third-party research that we've looked at as well. There was an iPull rank study that looked at about 8,000 searches in relation to what is the best laptop, what is the best flat screen TV, what's the best mobile phone, etc., etc. And when you ran those searches on Perplexity had a tendency to cite, like for questions in relation to consumer electronics, things like Engadget and Which and, stuff like that were all like kind of consumer review things that have expertise in consumer electronics. And if you asked it questions around like what's the best share to invest in, or best stock, or best company, what's the most investable company, etc., or like questions about investments, etc., it would cite things from like content from like Trading 212 and NerdWallet and things like that. So what that tells you is there's a sort of a semantic understanding of the relevance and kind of topical authority that AI has when it selects sources. So on one part, you're absolutely right. On another part, there is a threat, and it's something we talked about just before we got onto the call, which is there's a lot of very bad advice being peddled by folks in relation to this, because this is a new and interesting, a new area, in relation to like hacks, things that you can do like to quickly, improve how you appear on these different Gen AI platforms. And, paid as a part of that mix. People are really heavily pushing newswire distribution. They're pushing, advertorial. They're pushing other things, which absolutely work now. And, I'm not saying don't do it, but I am saying just be aware that just because something works today doesn't mean it's going to work in the future, because these algorithms change all the time. The models change all the time, and you've got to be keeping up to date with that. And you can't talk in absolutes of, you've got to distribute all of your content via a newswire, and if you don't, you'll never appear on a Gen AI platform, because it's just not true. right?
But Darryl, I mean, get this over to you, Simon, on this one. But that's been since day one. SEO's always changed. The social media platforms, the sites, they change the algorithm. There is no playing book. There's no rule book out there that is doing it. But Simon, are businesses doing enough to play in this game? Because they can't just fix up or add an FAQ to their website, change a little bit of metadata on their website, and hope that they're now, hey, we're GEO approved. They've got to do a lot more work behind the scenes.
That's right, they do. Look, it's a black box. And Darryl says rightly that the algorithms change the whole time. You might read at one point, oh, Reddit's really super important. And then a month later, it's no longer in vogue. And LinkedIn instead, LinkedIn thought leadership. The answer is it's still early days, even though we've come through that sort of peak of excitement through to the trough disillusionment. And believe it or not, AI is less popular in the US than ICE, the enforcement agency right now. So it goes to show just what a sticky area it is. But regardless, it's super important. And I've got some stats that back that up. People are using it. People are buying from it as well. That's the other important thing, particularly as agentic AI gets increasingly popular. But still, we have to remember this is the black box, and it changes and it learns and it gets updated arguably twice a year, but people don't really know. So therefore, as an owner of a business, you have to be across the whole mix, really. That's one thing. You've got to be pulling lots of levers. You've also got to be asking questions where you show up in the different LLMs. And as Darryl rightly said, they all have a different flavor. Perplexity is much more B2B. ChatGPT is much more consumer, arguably. So you've got to figure out where your LLM is, where your audience is, and then you've got to ask it questions about your brand and also your competitors, emulating the sort of questions you think your clients and your customers are going to ask. And then it is really in terms of raising brand visibility within those answers, trying to respond to what you think the prompts are going to be. And it's quite an arduous process. And that's where someone like Hard Numbers comes in to help and do an audit. And then being across both the earned aspects, the owned, and also third-party entities like Wikipedia, which of course you can't write your own wiki post, but you can certainly do an editorial contribution. Reddit, if you're brave, LinkedIn thought leadership, but you really need to be across the whole lot and then come back to measure it. So it feels like a heavy lift. And in some ways it is. But from a communications perspective, we've got all these skills. It's just retraining the muscle. And what I would add, Nick, and I can see you wagging your finger, but what I would add is, from my perception over the last year, the big end of town has really got its head stuck in the sand, is not doing enough. This is an opportunity, folks.
This is it, Simon. This is exactly where I was heading down the path of, because there's a lot of CEOs and MDs that'll be listening to this. That'll be sitting there and going, well, what is it that my comms team are doing? What is my marketing team doing to improve this? Are they actually doing anything? Because
my answer to that is go into your favorite LLM and say, tell me about company X, and see what comes up. You probably won't like what you're going to see necessarily. I'm going to hedge my bets there, and then take that and ask your comms lead what's going on.
Excellent, because I've actually done a chat GPT on the both of you. I'm going to share you some results very, very shortly. Because I get it. I love it. You know what? The one thing about chat GPT, or even AI, the large language models, all of them, is that even from a creative perspective, we don't actively use it to make content, but it's not a bad little starter to kick off a few ideas or inspire a few things to do. Because if there's one thing in media that we do know, and from an earned media perspective, you cannot deliver an AI-driven piece of content that's going to get past. It just will be knocked off straight away. So there's just a little message to everyone. It's something that we talk about a lot. But it does
Would you like
help.
some stats for that, my friend? Because you know Darryl, I like numbers.
You like it, and give them to me hard, Darryl.
Okay, so research published very recently from SEMrush, right? They analysed 42,000 blog posts, and they analysed them for where they ranked on Google in terms of position 1 to 10, and were they written, put them through a a tool to say, does it look like it was written by AI or does it look like it was written by a human? And there was a 5% probability that the majority of the content in position 1 of Google was written by a person, right? And when you compare it to like AI generated content, right, it accounted for like less than 10% of the position 1 content that they looked at. Okay, so what that tells us is, exactly to your point, don't rely on AI to write your content. Of course, use it as a thought starter. Of course, use it as a way of helping you to not start with a blank page. But don't ask AI to write your content for you, because you are not going to rank well from an SEO perspective, and therefore you're not going to rank well from a geo perspective either.
And you're not going to rank well from a human perspective.
100%, Nick.
That is the key here.
Yeah.
It is the absolute key. Humans do not want to hear from machines. They want to hear from other humans. And even if you're not a great writer, if you're not a great content generator, it is very easy to sort of fall into that trap of just punching out crap, what I call it, and what do they call it? The sloth, the slop, the AI slop. Yeah, it is.
So Nick, here is also an opportunity. You operate a niche business, you provide a niche product. Write about it from your own content point of view. Go into that expertise. Don't hold back. You don't need to sort of keep it 2 or 3 lines, because the more there is, the more niche and expert and authoritative it is, the more likelihood that you're going to get picked up as the expert. AI does pick up, it now does decipher between slop and what's really good domain expertise. And then the good old anchor bias, which is in the back of all our brains, when we see it come up, float up on ChatGPT or Perplexity, we tend to believe it. So experts count.
They do. Experts, it is the new gold. It is. I still say it has been the gold from day one, but it's just got such greater value. It's sort of trading what oil prices are trading at the moment. It's sort of it's gone through the roof. We won't talk about that. That's a topic for another day. So, gentlemen, you're 2 leaders in this space. You're kicking goals both from the teaching perspective, the advising perspective for both corporate individuals, communications companies. Just one tip, a tip from you each, as to sort of how can businesses quickly now just shift and change and have a think about how they're approaching from your lens. What can they do?
So as a communicator, and that's my goal, that's my area, be bold and know in yourself that you have inherent value. You've got three C's, which I can't lay claim to. Professor Scott Galloway, very influential US marketer, talks about curiosity, connectivity, and curation. And I think all 3 of those elements are key to getting your story across. This is why the communications discipline as such will be enduring for a long time to come. Now, with that in mind, it is about experimentation. It is about using all your own and earned resources that you have to hand. Writing for humans. So I talked about the deep expertise, but write as you would speak. And then you've got to continue to monitor and adjust. And as you do that, it will get easier and easier, more intuitive, and that muscle will get stronger. But remember, it's not just reputational opportunity, it is a commercial opportunity, and that should be what's driving you, particularly if you're a challenger brand and you want to take it to the big guys, because I assure you the big guys are not doing enough.
Yep. Simon, that is a message that I can hear coming from you today, is that the big players, you reside in Victoria, Australia, the ASX 200, those big brand companies, they're missing the opportunity. I think they're still sitting as if it's 2004 and we'll just hit the SEO guy and get our rankings up a little higher. But they're not doing enough in that space. Darryl, what's your one tip that you'd give to someone who is exploring the the GEO space to find out whether it's actually working or it's working well for them?
Yeah. Can I give you 2 tips? One is going to be a slight plug, if that's okay, but I'll make it quick.
Well, the plug is fine. Just give us your tip.
Okay, cool. All right. First off, start monitoring this stuff. So we call it like a prompt library. Build a set of prompts that focus on the kind of user persona that you're targeting, how you talk, how they would talk about your product, service category, etc., in natural language, and what the kind of USPs of your product versus your competitors are, or what the buying criteria are for the users, and then track how you are showing up on the different LLMs for those searches on a regular basis. And that's something that we do for our clients, but there's plenty of tools out there that enable folks to do that as well. And then
just before you go further there, Darryl, what kind of clients do you work with?
So in the UK, I mean, we've been very fortunate, I think, that by being quite early to the GEO thing, and it being something that impacts companies with a reputation to protect, particularly in regulated industries, it's led us to working with really quite mature companies on this in this space, and ones that probably wouldn't otherwise have worked with hard numbers. We probably wouldn't have been on their radar otherwise, because we're a 20 headcount agency. We're only 6 years old. The big banks, insurance companies, financial services businesses that we've worked with typically look for bigger, more global,
sure,
etc. kind of businesses. But yeah, we've worked with FTSE 100 companies and large financial services and other regulated industries on exactly this stuff, because I think, as I said earlier, they've got a reputation to protect, and they can see the kind of opportunity, but they can also see the threat vector, here, particularly as we have the great decoupling of impressions from traffic, and everyone can see that whilst, impressions are increasing, traffic, particularly from traditional organic search, is declining. We've got to replace that. And one of the ways in which we can do that is through how we show up on Gen AI platforms. And the one slight plug, ever so slight, just super quickly, is if anyone is wondering how are they going to get started in this area, he wrote what started as a blog post. It was supposed to only be 600 to 800 words, ended up being 2,200 word opus on GEO, and then we turned that into a 3,000 word ebook. It's downloadable on our website. If you go to bit.ly, capital GEO, lowercase for uppercase PR, you can download it. You can download it there, and it's everything. We will have
a link in the show notes. So if you're listening, get into the show notes and have a read. And it doesn't surprise me that a 600 word end up being 2,500 words from you, Darryl Sparey.
Coming from me, yeah.
Yeah, it would have just kept going and going and going. I love it. Gentlemen, I did do a ChatGPT search before I came on to speak to you both this evening. And the question I did put into ChatGPT, is Darryl Sparey credible on GEO?
Go on. I'm interested now.
Short answer, yes, but with a very specific lens and some clear limitations. It does say that you're a strong authority in PR-led GEO. He leads Hard Numbers. It's a PR agency actively developing GEO services and audits. He's been publicly discussing how earned media influences AI outputs and citations. His work focuses on how LLMs source editorial content, which is central to geomechanics. I then went on further, Simon Murphy, because it then asked me the question, would you like me to tell you a little bit about Simon Murphy? He said, Simon, yes, he is definitely up there. He's still with Darryl in that third tier space, because you both... Well, third tier. Now, this is the interesting thing that has described you, because you're not actual GEO founders. You haven't come out and provided content on that space. You haven't naturally worked in it, but it's something that you've grown into from your backgrounds. Yeah. And it's so important, because I think if you were a finder of it, or if you discovered it or made it, there's only very few limited people in that space. But you're actively working with brands to see how this works well for them, and that's important.
It is important. And look, Nick, to that point, I don't think anyone owns the geo space, and I'm all for communications folk. Bang the drum constantly, going, this is a communications reset, folk. Step up, take the reins. And it should be storytellers. It is the chief storyteller. But that person doesn't necessarily have to sit in the comms team. It might be the founder, it might be the MD. It just lives and breathes the company and wants to get that story out there. So no one owns it, but certainly everyone can benefit from it. And what I would say is that AI really amplifies the gap between those who articulate expertise and those who don't. So, there's the opportunity.
Such a great point. And Darryl, I raised it earlier before, that reference to those that think geo can solve everything. If they're telling you to put all your eggs in the one basket. It was a post that you did put up on LinkedIn. I did love it, because there are a lot of snake oil salesmen in this space. There is a lot of dodgy content that is flying around, and a lot of people believe that they know everything that's going on. What's the best way to deal with that, Darryl?
I wrote a poem for my little boy. I wrote a poem for both my kids before they were born, and I basically tried to teach them all of the hard lessons that I've learned, to try to help them to get from A to B a bit more quickly. I've read you sections of the poem, actually, Nick, that I wrote for Halia.
You have, Darryl. I'm just now letting the audience know we're raising this to an R-rated podcast. So parents' responsibility.
Yeah.
Turn off
No.
now.
So one of the things I wrote for my little boy in the poem is, like, I wish that there was such a thing as shortcuts, but there aren't. Right?
Yeah, love it.
I wish I could tell you there was a quicker way to achieve your dreams, but the sad truth is it's slow, takes time, the road is long, and it takes hard effort, and that is true. I think that is a truism of everything. I have yet to find a hack to become a millionaire. I've yet to find a hack to rank position 1 on Google, and I've yet to find a hack to get clients to be top of the citations on Geo. What I can tell you is I can get you there, right? But it will take time and consistent effort across a range of different mediums to help you achieve that. There are no such things as shortcuts. There's no such things as hacks. But if you do the right things and you do them consistently, another thing I say to my kids all the time: success is consistency over time, and it's nothing else, right? You go at it, and you go at it consistently, and you give of your best, and then you'll get to where you want to get in the long run.
I love that, Darryl. I love that. And we'll take down the R rating, because it was another poem I was thinking that you might have been reciting. So we'll take that to R rating down. But it is the journey, isn't it? I suppose it is that journey. And I guess what we do need in this space are good advisors, good leaders that can take us along this journey, because it is a minefield. And I started off the podcast, the dark arts of SEO. And look, I'm not saying it's dead either, but what I do know is that the amount of time, energy, and money that I have spent to try and raise that to a level where it does get on the first page. It is seen. It is getting results. But I'll share this with you both, is that late last year and early this year, we had 5 incoming inquiries, of which you ask straight up, where did you hear about us? I put you through ChatGPT. I said, do you put media stable through? No, you just put earned media or put media relations and expertise. And that it pleased me to hear that, because that is nothing more than the time and energy that I've put into the content I've put out there. I haven't put dollars into Google's big, wealthy buckets of money. So that does make me feel better that we're on the right track. But guiding, and Simon, this is to you, because I know that you work with a lot of businesses, ASX businesses and large businesses. Who should we be talking to? The CEO, the MD, the marketing manager? Who are the people that you should be talking to?
Well, look, it's a mix. It's a mix of the lot. Typically, I'm going in and talking to the chief communications officer or the head of corporate affairs, but more often than not, and this is positive, they're bringing in the digital folk as well. So we're having a joined up conversation about SEO and GEO, because as Darryl said, you can't disconnect the two entirely, and you know that will be the case for time to come. And marketing, of course, is coming into the mix. But, ultimately, what started with reputation is now becoming reputation plus commercial outcomes. Hey, look, I don't mind who takes the reign, whether it's the CEO or the CCO, but they should know that there's real opportunity there if they can get that story told and told well in a way that raises their visibility in these chatbots.
They work side by side together, reputation and
correct.
commerciability. If you don't have, you've got to have both to actually do this. I think you've got to be doing it for the purposes of commercial gain, and your reputation is everything. And Darryl, that's straight over to you on that. You talked about reputation, protection of that, but this is for me and me personally. It's reputation's one thing, but for people to discover me, new opportunities, new business. It is important.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't want to say that brand and performance is a false dichotomy, because it's not, and the research shows from much cleverer people than me that when you work those two channels in concert with one another, you get better results. I was at an event last week organised by Inclusive where they had Vicky McNamara, who's VP of Marketing for Workday, and she was talking about how you can't see brand and performance as separate. Your brand activity needs to connect to revenue, otherwise it's going to be cut. And your performance activity needs to support the brand. Otherwise, brand search, traffic, etc. is going to plateau. So you've got to think of these two things in concert with one another. And, I see brand as a kind of correlative for reputation, right? So, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We've got to think, and hopefully, when we started Hard Numbers Up 6 years ago, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create a business that connected the creative to the commercial.
Love it. Gentlemen, we nearly did not do this podcast. It's, not because you jumped onto Trevor Young's podcast to jump ahead quite a few episodes ahead of me, but Bournemouth beat Arsenal on the weekend, and
yeah,
I'm a very, very sad gooner. I haven't really got out of bed since, and I know you're a B-Town supporter, Darryl Sparey.
Of course, my friend. Of course. Well, funnily enough, we have we made a small acquisition of another agency, and we brought 4 people into our business, and 2 of them are gooners, and we had a couple of gooners in the office as well. So we've sort of got this like little, Arsenal enclave now within Hard Numbers. And yeah, I was persona non grata in the office.
Well, you've always had a very special talent of attracting the right people, Darryl. And as you and I did work back in the day at Precise Media, it was a lot of fun. And look, gentlemen, well done today. I feel like everyone's got a really good insight into geo, the difference between that, obviously, with SEO and what is a really emerging platform that businesses and from small to big can really get involved with. And I love that first tip. Go and chat GPT, go and LLM yourself and see what it comes out. And Simon, you're suggesting it doesn't come out too positively.
More often than not, it doesn't, unfortunately. But we can do something about that.
And that's it.
It's a great starting point.
And that's the moment. And that's the moment for business owners, for communicators. You might be holding the communication reins for a bank, a health fund, whatever that might be. But get on top of this now, because if you're not, you're going to get way left behind. And it is still very much emerging. And find people that know what they're doing. Get the right people behind you to do what they do very, very well. Darryl Sparey, Simon Murphy, if people want to get in contact with you, tell me how they can do it.
Simon,
indigomurphy.com.
Say that again, Simon.
indigomurphy.com.
Beautiful.
And I'm at Darryl Sparey on most platforms, and hard numbers is hardnumbers.co.uk.
Yeah, jump on LinkedIn, follow the great man Darryl Sparey and Simon Murphy. You can. I very rarely see that Darryl's in the office. He seems to be the speaker of the UK. Simon, it's probably time we got Darryl over here to Australia. Got him running around doing the circuit here.
I reckon
I'd
there'd
love
be
to.
an avid audience. So yeah, welcome Darryl Sparey Australia visit 2027 or maybe 26.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
I'd love to. John Kroll, who you know, Nick, has offered to put me up in his place as well if I come over.
His mansion. Oh well,
his
look
mansion,
at that.
Yeah, I'll be in his summer palace, maybe not the main, not the main, the main wing. Yeah.
I'm sure we could afford you. I'm not sure we can afford the aviation fuel by the time of 2027. It's a bit frightening. Gentlemen, a great chat tonight. Well done. It's pleasing to hear that and see the real practitioners out there doing the thing and advising in the right pathway, because I think the way that you both go about it, it's definitely the genuine thing, as opposed to a lot of the other things I see on social. They are telling me such different things, and I'm not thinking it's the right thing. So always trouble there. Well, you've been listening to the Experts Podcast. My name's Nick Hayes. I look forward to having your company next week when we get to speak to another expert and another medium. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Very smooth. Thank you, Nick.